Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Friday, December 5th, 2025. I feel like there's something important about today, and I don't know what it is. Anyway, regardless, maybe something I'm missing. I'm not sure. I can't remember. All right. There's a fine for X for $140 million from the EU. They are trying to crack down on free speech, and Carney is trying to align Canada closer with the EU. If you think that C9 will not be used to levy big fines against platforms and things like that, I'm sure they're cooking up some way to actually bring that to fruition, and I hope I'm wrong about that, but they're actually doing it in the EU, and this is tyrannical, and we shouldn't accept it. And unfortunately, it's already being pretty well accepted in England, right? There's 12,000 people in jail and arrested a year. There's a whole bunch of limits on free speech that the seemingly free Western world is putting up with, and more are being added daily, and that's very, very concerning. Very concerning indeed. Trump bans migration from 30 countries. That's interesting. Smith moves to make sure the Alberta Prosperity Project gets its question. And I've got another update about Smith. She was misrepresented in the CBC. I know you're shocked. And what she said in French wasn't saying that she would campaign against the Separatist Party. So Jason Levine tracked down that story, and he's got that for us later in the show. No more questions after leaders' debates. They want to scrap the scrums and the place for anybody to come and ask questions of the leaders after the leaders' debates. I'm not surprised. They're trying to limit our ability to question anything, and why provide time and space for questions when questions are the last thing they want to answer or deal with, right? So yikes, our government doesn't work for us. The federal government wants to file your taxes for you, and that's a big red flag for me. And John Rustad officially resigned yesterday, and there's more One BC news and news out of British Columbia more broadly with regards to the legislature, what they're doing to try and remove the threat of Dallas Brody and what One BC represents. They're trying to make the case that One BC is wasting time in the legislature. They're not focusing on serious problems, so on and so forth. They're trying to completely undermine basically the entire platform that One BC is running on. And I think that it's worth the time to look at. And so there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to talk about trade. I didn't even talk about this at the beginning, but the USMCA is in jeopardy. What do I mean by that? I mean, Trump says he's going to let it expire. So when Trump says crap like that, people should listen. The pundits in Canada and the pundits in the West think that Trump is a drooling idiot or something like that. But when he says stuff like this, he can make it happen. And whether he's an idiot or not is immaterial in the face of him actually being able to action these threats. And if the USMCA is removed from Canada, I give Canada about a week before we're a 51st state, or before a very, very deep, very, very severe depression or recession kicks in. And unless and until we join the United States, that recession won't abate. And it'll be crazy. I mean, there will be a lot of people impacted if anything that Trump is talking about here comes to fruition. So did I say lots to get to? Let's get to it. Let's get to it. Here's Trump talking about, yeah, well, we're not gonna renew the USMCA. We'll let it expire, and maybe we'll do another deal with Mexico and Canada. And so take this threat as it's intended, as a threat. And we should actually start doing something about the fentanyl. We should actually put our dairy and supply management up for negotiation. We should do the things that Trump has been asking us to do for years, so he doesn't have to economically annex us or something, right? Or whatever he's planning, because I don't think the full-scale economic destruction of Canada is what he's planning, but he's going to use the economy to force us to do what he wants. And if our leadership would prefer to destroy our country instead of doing what Trump wants, that's not the correct move here. And they could avoid this. I am firmly in the position that if Canada was acting intelligently and not like a bad faith, treasonous communist country, then we wouldn't have a problem. But we are acting like a bad faith, treasonous communist country. And if I was Trump, I'd probably be way worse than what Trump has been up to this point in time. So here's Trump talking about, hey, that USMCA, don't count on it.
Just an ongoing thing. It expires in about a year, and we'll either let it expire or we'll maybe work out another deal with Mexico and Canada. But Look, Mexico and Canada have taken advantage of the United States, like just about every other country.
Trump's framing is off. CUSMA does not expire in a year, but the trade agreement between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico will be reviewed and likely revised starting next June. In Washington, behind closed doors, high-stakes consultation hearings are now underway. Industry, business leaders, and experts telling the Trump administration what they think about the deal, which is also known here as USMCA.
Just an ongoing thing. It expires in about a year. And
so people are responding to Table Salt. Table Salt says major breaking. Trump signals that he could exit from the USMCA entirely. This is an extinction level event to Canada. He's going to do it. I have a strong feeling about this. We're talking about 400,000 jobs and an instant severe recession. Yeah, all of that's terrible, right? And Julian Assange says, how did the Liberals think a Republican victory would turn out for them after Liberals prostrated themselves to the Democrat Party and did everything they could to get the Democrats reelected? They backed the wrong horse, and now Canadians are paying for their foolishness. Trudeau and Liberals chant 4 more years for Obama and give him a standing ovation in the House of Commons. F-A-F-O. So you idiots, you did this to yourselves. And yeah, I don't disagree. I have to say, I genuinely do not disagree. The Canadian Reset says this will be a great friendly meeting. President Trump will be charismatic, funny, and will also again conclude that Mark Carney is a world-class leader. Canada will get all European games, US all Spanish and South American games. Good luck, Mark Carney. I don't think so. We can't negotiate at all with Trump. But Scheinbaum, Trump, and Carney are meeting today for the World Cup draw or something like that, where the World Cup games are going in North America and South America, I guess. And so it'll be interesting, but I don't think we're making any headway here. Carney keeps telling Canada very, very, very plainly that he has no intention of changing anything. He says, our relationship with the United States is over. It's changed and we can't bring it back. It's gone. It's never going to be the same. And we've got to do more for ourselves than the United States can do for us. And that's a fantasy. That is a fantasy. You should be doing everything you can to fix this situation, not telling Canadians, prepare for the worst, guys. Get in crash positions, Canada, because it's going to be bad. That's the wrong response right now. Here's Western Standard, and they say BC Pulp and Paper Coalition says province, not Trump, to blame for mill closures. Trump is a convenient boogeyman, and he's the person they're going to blame in order to save their own skins for the bad policies they keep shoving down our throats. And because Trump is this convenient boogeyman, the pulp and paper mill closing, well, that's his fault too. And it's not. It's not. It's the bad policies of Canada. It's Canada acting in bad faith, like a communist, treasonous government. And would you deal with us? I wouldn't deal with us. We're snakes. We didn't even respect the USMCA during the trade issues previously. When Trump was putting excess trade tariffs on Canada, we were not respecting the USMCA when we were tariffing things that were under the USMCA. And the Americans had to say, like, hey, you have to stop that. So we do not behave in a way that says good partner here, reliable partner here. We behave like a crazy girlfriend, like calling you up at 4:00 in the morning because they had a weird dream about you to make sure that you're home or something like that. It's like, what? What do you do? What? And so we are behaving crazy and acting offended when the sane person says, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, you actually want to continue trading with us? Because it doesn't seem like you do. Ryan says of Mark Carney says, it's often the most vulnerable Canadians. This is our grab bag of governance money edition. It's often the most vulnerable Canadians who don't file their taxes and miss out on the benefits they need or have paid into. So we're introducing automatic federal benefits, pre-filing taxes for up to 5.5 million lower income Canadians. Don't you do it. We'll do it for you, says the government. I'm from the government. I'm here to help, right? Those are the worst things to hear from a government. Ryan says, I remember being denied EI benefits by your government that I paid into for years when I was wrongfully fired for refusing to take an experimental product. The other thing about EI is they pushed everybody into the curb. You were not allowed to choose to have EI. You couldn't say, listen, like, I qualify for EI, the old EI program. I want that. Couldn't have that. You had to have CURB. And so when that happened, then they came back years later and said, you have to repay that CURB money that you that you stole from us, you stealer. And that's erroneous too, right? Like, and so that's a weird thing. They deny people benefits. They push you into programs that you don't need. And then years later, and so you take the money and you're like, okay, I guess, like, whatever. And then years later, you get mail saying you took this money and you have to give it back. And it's like, well, actually, I applied for EI and you forced me onto this program that I didn't need. And so it is not a benevolent government. It is not a nice government that's doing this. It is a government that wants more control, in my opinion. Pierre Poilievre's highlighting the increase in food prices. Yesterday, I was saying food is surprisingly cheap. And what I'm talking about is not that food is surprisingly cheap compared to what it used to be, because I grew up in the early 2000s, and I was 20 in the early 2000s and 2008 even during the crash and things like that. What I mean is I can still get 3 boxes of cereal for $10. The beef and the meat is abundant and on the shelves, and it's not 80% of my take-home salary. I looked in history. I was looking in history. I like to compare history. I think often to myself that my bed is much more comfortable than kings of like Henry VIII's time type deal. Like, I have a bed that is way more comfortable than them. But I think, what did people spend money on way back in the day? And I guess there wasn't, Xboxes and video games and movies to go to and things like that. But like 80% of the salary of their what they earned went to food, right? And we're nowhere close to that. And so my point was not that food is cheap. Food is expensive, and I'm not saying food's cheap, but like 3 boxes of cereal, pretty cheap. There's lots and lots of meat everywhere, pretty cheap. You could afford it to eat meat multiple times a week. And that's still cheap, because where they want us to go is not to be able to afford anything. They want us to not be able to afford meat. Should be a special treat, right? You get meat once a week, and otherwise you're eating noodles, right? And beans or something like that. And vegetarian, because, cow farts and things like that. We are being pushed. Our economy is being pushed, and they're trying to max us out. That's what the carbon tax is about. That's what all of these bird flus and things like that. We got to kill all these animals. That's what it's all about. It's targeting a specific industry and jacking up the prices. They're letting us grow food, and then they kill the food before we can actually eat the food. And they starve us in this way, Holodomor style. When I say food is cheap and plentiful, I mean compared to what's coming. And I hope I'm wrong about that. But look at what's happened in the last 15 years. Right? Food is drastically more expensive. Just the last 10. This is a Pierre Poilievre tweet talking about the last 10. So that's what I mean. I hope that makes more sense. Pierre Poilievre says Canada's food price report shows Canadian families' grocery bills doubling after a decade of Liberals. Scrap all hidden Liberal taxes on groceries so families can afford nutritious food. Annual family grocery bill 2015, that's $8,286. In 2026, $17,572. So presumably in 2025, it's $16,000, because we're supposed to be getting $1,000 bump next year. That's the inflationary bump for food costs, right? And all of those food costs are being layered on when people are losing their jobs. And so here's Aaron Gunn, and he's talking about this. And the Liberals pivot and talk about how they support softwood lumber, and they don't engage with the lost employment, the lost jobs, and the impact that has. Here we go.
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Devastated, gutted, heartbroken. Just 3 of the emotions I felt after learning 375 Canadians would be losing their jobs with the closing of the Crofton Mill. These are Canadians with mortgage payments, with young families, Canadians who are already struggling with the rising cost of living before receiving this terrible news. This government promised to support our workers and secure market access for our goods. Instead, lumber tariffs have tripled and thousands of Canadians have lost their jobs. If their so-called plan is really working, can they guarantee that no more mills in Canada will close as a result?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, that Conservative member needs to take several seats. On my riding of Vancouver Island, I can tell you that they know we are supporting the softwood lumber industry, whereas their plan is to, quote, get out of the way, to, quote, do nothing. Our government is investing in...
So they're not interested in actually dealing with this issue. They're saying, we support softwood lumber. We're helping. We're not hurting. And they are hurting. Their policies harm us. And you can't have a conversation with them because they're ideologues. Holly Doan says Canada Post is seeking more emergency funding. A PSPC SPA manager, this is, sorry, Parks and or Public Services and Procurement Management, suggests MPs have speculated Canada Post requires another $500 million after receiving $1.034 billion line of credit last year. A line of credit will give you a loan. Okay, sounds good, guys. Canada Post, why is it that Amazon can make a profit with their shipping, right? And Canada Post can't? Or like the U.S. Post Office, they can make a profit, right? Their thing works. How come ours worked in the past, didn't it? Right? So what do we need to do to make it work? Because it seems like we're bloated with senior management and we don't have enough people to actually do the job. So I don't know. Here is Michelle Rempel Garner, and she says, watch this and feel my frustration. Again, this is refugees or fake refugees who are getting access to our healthcare system. And Michelle Rempel says, why are we doing this? Why don't we just deport them? And you get the liberal tap dance. You get the liberal talking about, oh, well, if the conservatives just did this and that. They say we want to give healthcare to people who don't have healthcare. And Michelle Rempel says, I agree with you, but it's not really, I don't know. The whole thing is kind of wonky.
So you're asking Parliament to give your department about $600 million extra dollars for the interim federal health program, and that is the program by which you give a lot of supplemental benefits like vision care and mental health supports to people even who have failed asylum claims. Do you think that it's fair that, like, let's say a Canadian senior who has paid taxes all their lives get less types of supplementary benefits than asylum seeker who has a failed claim, like somebody who's a bogus asylum claimant? Do you think, like, why should I give you $600 million for bogus asylum claimants when Canadian seniors can't get basic health care? How does that make any sense to you?
So thanks for that. Couple of things. One, if you took a look at the budget, we have introduced a copay to handle some of that. How
much
some
do you
of that
expect
concern.
people to pay?
But as well, the dollar amount that you referred to stems from the fact that it is an interim federal health program where the volumes were up.
Yes.
A copay from fake asylum seekers. A copay. So they're going to use tax dollars that we're giving them to copay for the free healthcare that we're giving them? How does a copay work?
Years ago.
Yes, because you hashtag welcome to Canada 300, 500, 600,000 people who have bogus asylum claims. I'm aware that the numbers are up, and that's why you're asking us for. Right. I just asked you, is it fair? Like, you're asking taxpayers, us to send you $600 million to pay for things like orthotics and vision care for people who have bogus asylum claimants and are still in the country. So is that fair? Why would I do that? That seems dumb to me.
So listen, I realize it's not something you would do, but I can tell you these money goes for people that are here because of human trafficking, goes for women that are here because of domestic violence.
Great, let's give it to those people.
No. Let's. If those people have failed asylum claims, and you say, but they were human trafficked, they're losing their hair. They have orthodontics they need, right? Like, oh no, I don't care. They're not qualified for anything. Send them home. I don't care. I don't care. And if they're human trafficked, I'm sure that there's some kind of, we'd pick that up for the asylum claims and things like that. If they're being human trafficked, then, you shouldn't send them back to their human trafficker, right? You shouldn't hand them back to their abuser or something like that and say, have fun, see you later, back home, right? No, send them back home and maybe have their family pick them up at the airport or something like that. I don't know. But we shouldn't be on the hook for their medical bills because circumstances are bad for that person. Like, I'm sad for you, and there are circumstances that are terrible in the world, but that's not our responsibility as a country to deal with that for everybody. I'm sorry, that just isn't. Go home and ask your government to deal with that, because it's not my fault and not my responsibility, and we're not going to pay for it. Give it to those people. No, send them home. If they're fake asylum people and they didn't qualify, you send them home. You don't say, oh, the circumstances are such that my heartstrings are being pulled because, oh, it's so sad. I don't care. I don't care. It's not my responsibility. Not my fault. Didn't do it. Sorry. Nope. Go home. Go home and ask your government to compensate you for all this hardship. Tom Quiggin says Mark Carney was indeed on the board of directors of the Rideau Hall charity that okayed tax credits for corporations whose donations were used to pay federal contractors on public works. The names on the board read like a list of Ottawa insiders: Dominic Barton, James Baxter, Elizabeth Cannon, Anne-Marie Hubert. I've heard a couple of these names before. David Johnston, Helen Landreau, John Manley, John Montalbano, Louis Porta. So there are a few on here, notably David Johnston and Dominic Barton, and Elizabeth Cannon rings a bell, but I don't know why. Mark Cullen, that rings a bell, and I don't know why. Jean Charest, right? So there's all sorts of monies and back insider deals and cronyism, right? But Blacklock's reporter says Mark Carney was director of a charity that okayed tax credits for corporations whose donations were used to pay federal contracts on public works. Carney had no comment. Yeah, no comment. I bet. Wonder why. Jeffrey Rath says no one in Canada voted to join the EU. The Alberta economy has had enough problems created by Liberals in Ottawa without Albertans being micromanaged by European bureaucrats. Truth. Absolute truth indeed. And the unfortunate thing is, people like this idea, and I don't know why, because geographically it doesn't make any sense. And just like a lot of the justification for mass immigration doesn't make sense either. And so it's interesting because lots of people will talk about how this is a good deal while watching the USMCA blow up. It's not a good deal. We shouldn't be focused on this. This is bad. And the consequences of this are why I'm covering it, right? Some people are calling me Dark Mark these days. I don't mean to be negative. I just want to point out the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is drastically worse than most people think. So yeah, I guess that does fit. Anyway, one of the things that surprises me, so the price for the United Kingdom to join the EU security thing is 6.75 billion, I think. A lot of billions of dollars, right? That's a lot of money. And our price is $10 million. Jeffrey Rath thinks that we are going to have to pay money per contract we bid on, and that's going to get into the billions because the size of the contract will denote the size of the bidding price or whatever. But it's like a market, like a website market, where they hold you have to pay to access these things, but then when you access them, you'll make more than that bidding thing, ideally. But I don't like it because we're letting our biggest trading partner languish while we set up something that is, I don't think, going to be beneficial in the way that it's being sold. Here's the newspaper article from Bloomberg. The European Union says Canada will need to pay 10 million euros, the equivalent of 16 million Canadian dollars, to join a defense procurement agreement with the continent, a price tag that's raising questions about how much investment the pact will generate. Canada this week officially joined the $245 billion Security Action for Europe program, SAFE. It's a part of the Rearm Europe initiative to make the continent less reliant on American defense technology and funding. Defense Minister David McGuinty announced Monday the deal had been finalized, but was circumspect when asked how much Canada would need to pay, telling reporters on Parliament Hill that we'll have more to say about that in due course. EU spokesman Thomas Rainier revealed the fee during a press briefing Tuesday in Brussels. Canada will have to start to pay a one-off contribution of 10 million euros to the EU budget, and then this will be reassessed, he said. Oh, okay, $10 million or 10 million euros, and then we'll reassess it. Canada will pay a $2.5 million euro upfront administrative contribution and a $7.5 million euro upfront annual participation contribution. An agreement in principle has been reached, but technical discussions continue in order to finalize treaty text, wrote department spokesperson John Babcock. Scroll down a little bit. The EU has asked the United Kingdom to pay between 4 and 6.5 billion euros. That's less than what I saw. Several times the size of Canada's fee. University of Quebec, a Montreal professor, Justin Massey, wrote on social media that the much smaller Canadian fee raises questions about how much investment the deal will bring to Canada. Given that the entry costs are based on the expected benefits a third party will derive from the access to the EU instrument, we should temper our expectations, he wrote. So it's not a good deal. It's not really expected to be a good deal, but people are going to like it because Trump man bad. But here's the other aspect of this. If we're getting into the European Union's defense contracting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we're right on the cusp of World War III. What do you mean? Well, I thought Ukraine was right on the cusp of just having an end to that war. No, 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 says Germany. Not at all. No way, no how. And Germany says Germany is losing its mind, or silenced sirs says Germany is losing its mind in public. The foreign minister threatens next week Russia either bows or we enter the war directly. And if it turns into a world war, then let it be for Ukraine. This isn't political pressure. It's outright madness from a country once called Europe's brain. When a world war threat becomes a casual sentence, know that the entire continent is sliding towards disaster. Sure is. Sure is. That's not great, right? And I want to do this. So when I started the show this morning, I forgot to hit the recording button. So I missed the first 5 minutes. So I have to do some post hoc editing. So that's going to be annoying. And I was thinking of just running the whole show, but I still have to do editing afterwards. So it's very frustrating. So I have to say goodbye to the stream right now. No, I'm not going to say goodbye to the stream right yet. I'm going to do this. I want to get this done, and then I'll say goodbye to the stream. But it's going to take a bit longer for me to get my show out today because I have to edit it, and that's annoying. I digress. Here is Ryan Gerritsen, and he's talking about C9, and C9 is terrible, and it's way worse than you think, and we're being attacked on multiple vectors. Our speech is just one of them. Here's this guy talking about how bad C9 really is.
Here's what people are missing about Bill C9. It's not really about hate crimes as much as it is about thought crimes. And what really troubles me is that now the government and police officers on the ground can look at your actions and imply or impose upon you what you were thinking when you did it, so that an offense under the criminal code now has a hate crime element to it, which dramatically increases the penalties you would be facing, and is rife for misapplication to control speech. So if you start criticizing a policy or criticizing a group in Canada that's doing something that you think hurts Canada, they can say, oh my God, that's a hate crime. And now you're going to be at the mercy of a police department that's politically correct, laying charges that could destroy your life. We've seen what it did in England and Scotland and Ireland. And essentially the police over there are spending their resources arresting people for Facebook posts while rapes go uncharged, uninvestigated, while the country is falling apart, because these are visible things that we can show that it looks like the government is protecting the vulnerable by curtailing the speech of its citizenry, but it doesn't allow the citizenry to criticize the government. It's a double-edged sword. We should be very careful about Bill C9, and we should do everything we can to make sure it doesn't pass into law.
The Liberals are going to ram it through. How do I know they're going to ram it through? This is their behavior at the committees. Larry Brock says the Liberal chair just canceled today's Justice Committee meeting on Bill C9. This comes less than 24 hours after the Liberal MPs stood in the House accusing Conservatives of delays, claiming that the government was committed to moving justice reforms forward. But today they canceled the meeting themselves. The Liberals can't manage their own agenda, can't manage the Justice Committee, and they certainly can't fix the crime and bail chaos they created. Canadians deserve competence, not a government that says one thing in front of the cameras and does the exact opposite behind closed doors. That's going to continue, right? Here is, there's another one. There's another one about there should have been another one about about what's going on with C9, but I digress. We'll move on. Robbie Starbuck says the EU Commission is hitting X with a $140 million